Hello, dear listener, and welcome to another episode of the Inforium. I forgot that I'm supposed to be looking at that camera instead of that camera. This is a show about productivity, but not about which camera to look at when you're doing a podcast that most people don't even watch on video.
That's true. That's
I really
true.
botched that
Most
intro.
people don't see any of this.
We're back to doing a remote recording today, which is why the audio may sound a little bit different. Apologies to my editor, Anna, in advance for having to futz with the audio settings once again. But, we're not even remote because of COVID. We're just remote because busy.
Yeah, well, you've got like a house to do house things with, among other things.
I'm still a little bit waiting on that. But it is definitely crunching the month in terms of like plans I'm having to move up because of the move.
Yeah, so this whole month is going to be like, that's going to be the changer that made this month what it is.
Yeah, it's going to be a heck of a month. And of course, I've decided to add extra projects that I didn't have planned before on my plate because obviously I have no chill.
Well, that's good because we actually have some project check-in coming up in this episode.
We do have project check-in. So yeah, I guess, coming up in this episode, if there is any sort of episode summation or index, I don't know what you call it, we have a project check-in for what we've been doing. We've got our main topic where we'll be talking about the concept of enough and when do you have enough? And then we have some cult member Q&A.
Yeah.
So, a good old classic episode of the Inforium. That's how Dad did it. That's how America does it. And it's worked out pretty well so far.
Yeah.
I think. For 6 episodes as of now. One thing that I can promise you we will not be talking about in this episode is the election. Partly because, as we record this, on election day, you and I have no idea what's about to happen. But when everyone's listening to this, they will hopefully know already.
That's true.
There's just really
for the record,
value.
We have no insight into what you, future listener, already know.
I was wondering about one thing the other day. Can you think of another website that has as long of a time period between its cyclical traffic boosts as 538? Which for people who don't know, 538 is Nate Silver's blog where he does all sorts of like polling and statistical data on elections, but it is basically like everyone's homepage. Is there a
census website that?
Well, maybe. I remember filling out the census. Was it online or was it through paper this time?
I don't know. Maybe there's a website. If so, then that one's probably a little longer.
If there's a census website, that is a decade-long traffic.
But also, I doubt a census website would be like
pattern?
Working real hard for good Google Analytics. It's probably don't care not. That they're not getting traffic the rest of the time.
Yeah, like right now, the 538 team is like, all right, well, how are we going to keep people coming back to the site after this is all done?
They do stuff for like sports and stuff as well. But yeah, I imagine the bulk get a lot of traffic comes from political.
But I would have to imagine if you were to look at the analytics on like a decade-long time period, you would see 2 gigantic spikes in 2016 and 2020, and then everything else would just completely pale in comparison.
I imagine, with a little baby spike for the middle years.
We have a biannual. That means twice a year, right? I always get semi and bi mixed up, or maybe it's semi.
I think it's semi-annual.
We have a semi-annual traffic spike pattern at College Info Geek because we get a lot of traffic in August and September, and then we get a bunch more again in January.
Oh, yeah.
Summers are usually pretty chill. We get little bumps like near midterms, near graduation, and then there's like pretty chill periods in between. But I would say our spikes aren't like massive. I think my friend Matt, who has a pool website, probably sees a much bigger spike. It's like once a year. In the summer, it's huge. And then in the winter, it's not, which I've told him he needs to start targeting Australian pool keywords so he can level that a bit.
Oh, yeah. That would make sense.
I don't know if he's done that. Yeah. All right. What say we do project check-in?
Yeah.
Because we haven't done it properly in about a month. So last time we recorded podcasts, we did 2 in a row. which meant that project check-in for the previous episode was not very productive. I think I had maybe one lunch hour in between those podcasts to get anything done.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I did, but since then we've had a full month of things. So I'm going to let you start. What have you gotten done in the last month?
I've been working on a new personal website that I just completed and put out onto the internet. Mm-hmm. It's I'm trying to consolidate my web presence a bit. It was spread out, so now everything's out on just kind of a list of links to the various things I do, a bit of an explanation of my projects, photography portfolio page, and by the time this episode comes out, probably a language resource page that I've been meaning to make for years.
Because you're still working on that, right?
Yeah, that's in progress right now, but it'll probably be done by the time this episode comes out. It's almost there. But yeah, I've been working on a new website. I guess it's at martinbay.me, and you can misspell that almost however you want. I bought several domains of my last name misspelled, so martinbay.me will probably go to the right one.
I wonder if you can get any variation of Martin dot something.
I don't know. Martin's a fairly common name.
I have Thomas.lol.
Yeah, but I don't need to buy an LOL. What am I going to do with that?
I think I redirect Thomas.lol to my...
I already have too many domains I'm not using. I don't know if I need to go out of my way to buy a bunch more.
That's true. I thought recently about what is the effective monthly cost of all my domains? Because they get renewed yearly. And they're on average, $15 a year. Some of them are more expensive because they're fancy on the kind, domains. Yeah. I probably spend probably $10 a month on domains. Oh, well, what are you going to do? But yeah, the website's looking great. I am especially impressed by how you have implemented the dark mode preference.
Oh, I'm really happy with the dark mode.
I want to get that on my website soon.
Also the color choices. Stuff. I was real happy about the color choices because I themed them.
You mean with the names?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the kind of extra unnecessary artistic touch I like to bring to everything.
I am very impressed with the new builder plugins because last time, in the past, I tried builder plugins. They're okay. And when they started out, they were all slow and kind of awful. Now, I mean, you built your new website with a builder plugin.
It's true. And it saved me a bunch of time that I didn't need to spend coding relatively simple things.
Yeah. I mean, I would probably have to think about this a little harder, but there's a part of me that's if we were to ever redesign CIG, I might say just do it in Elementor. Because maybe. I did my new site.
I'd have to think about a couple of special cases first, but it's not like you couldn't further customize it.
Yeah, a lot of the hub pages we've done, you could hook into custom field plugins to do dynamic data. And with the speed optimizations that you and I have done, I don't know about your site, but mine is nearly as fast as CIG.
I think my site, it's getting very good ratings from GT Metrics or the Chrome Lighthouse thing. Mm-hmm. I think it's about as fast as it can be without using a CDN or a more expensive host.
And you're not using a CDN?
Nope, not at all.
You're not using Cloudflare on the site at all?
No, I have 20 photos. So I didn't feel worth it.
Wow. So this is interesting because on our personal website guide, we recommend HostGator, which I've been using for very many years. But personally, I switched to WP Engine. I think it was in 2016 because CIG was just getting too much traffic.
Yeah.
And I continue to recommend HostGator as a good personal starter. There's a lot of people on the internet who think HostGator sucks. And
it's working just
this
fine
is
for
kind
me.
of interesting because you built, not only did you use this heavy builder plugin that a lot of people say you need to have a great host for, you're also getting really good page speed load times on the public end, and you're not even using Cloudflare. I was sure you'd be using Cloudflare.
Nope.
So that's pretty cool. It's actually very cool to me because it means we can update our guide with this and still recommend I think what is still
it's
the
working
cheapest
perfectly
possible option. It's if you get the discount, it's $2.60 a month or something when Squarespace is $18, I want to say.
Yeah, it's something like that.
And even Wix Premium is $12, and I don't like Wix because they're their responsive templates are not actually responsive. Like you have to build a mobile version, and then if you reload the page with the right width, it'll load that, but you can't like stretch it and have it collapse down, which that is not responsive as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So, uh, so yeah, that's cool. You got a brand new personal website, and it is more than one page. I
Yeah, it's
also have a
two.
brand new personal website. So I can't remember exactly what I said I had done on my last project check-in, but what I now have is a finished and launched personal website that has a homepage, an about page. It has a page for my courses. But what I'm most excited for, and what is definitely new since we talked about this last time, is I've got multiple blog pages. So I've got one for my general articles, one for my book notes, and then one specifically for Notion tutorials. And I have a templates page where I have 4 Notion templates that people can download. I had the 2 that already existed, which was the video project tracker for YouTubers and video editors, and then the note taking template. And since we last talked, I launched 2 more. One is called Ultimate Tasks and is a full featured task manager for Notion that basically replicates most of what you're going to have in like Todoist, Asana, Microsoft To Do, pretty much any task management app. I will say that purpose-built task management apps are still probably better in terms of workflow. But if you're somebody like me and you want to connect your tasks to other things like your video scripts or your wiki or anything like that, like doing it in Notion makes sense. And I put a ton of work into that, and people have been really liking it so far. And then, so that one, I'm going to call that one a smashing success. And then I had this idea. I've been playing a lot of Among Us, and I know you've been playing a little bit as well.
Yeah.
And I had seen a YouTube video where somebody had a little tool where they could like drag the player names under different columns like sus or dead or innocent or almost certainly imposter. And I'm like, hey, I could build that in Notion with just a Kanban table. So I did that. And then I was like, let's just go overboard with this and see what I can build. And I built this whole template where you can like put the location where you last saw somebody and it'll tell you if there's a vent and where the vent goes and like all kinds of crazy stuff like that. And I did a YouTube video on my main channel for it. And I was thinking to myself, okay, this is an example of like passion mashing, which we talked about a long time ago, I think, where you kind of take like 2 things you're interested in and smash them together. And passion mashing can go one of 2 ways. Either you create something brand new that like both audiences from those 2 interests love, or you like create an intersection that just kind of alienates everyone. And I'm like, all right, this is going to go one of those 2 ways. I am almost certain that this video will not be a middle of the road video. I think it's going to bomb hard or go viral. And unfortunately, it bombed hard.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's like I think it's been out for 4 days and we have like 50,000 views on it, which we were on track for
It is
every
fairly
video.
niche.
It is fairly niche. We were on track for every video in 2020 to have hit 100K, and this one I don't think will. Or it will take a very long time to do it. So whatever. Like I am not that mad because if I'm not allowed to take risks with my channel every once in a while, then like I just feel stuck doing the same kind of thing. So I'm glad
Yeah.
I tried it, but I definitely learned a lesson from it. And it's not like a total failure. Like people have used the template, and the thing I found is the amount of views it got was very low, but the people who were interested in it showed a lot more enthusiasm than they normally do on a video that I do. It got added to Product Hunt. It got put on Reddit. A lot more people were talking about it on Twitter than most of my videos. So it was kind of an interesting dichotomy there.
It's just
but anyway,
some solid niche stuff going on.
It's very niche. It was very fun to build. So possibly not the best business decision in terms of making a video on it, but who knows? I also I wanted to use it to market my new channel, which is called Thomas Frank Explains. The problem is I put the marketing for my channel at like 8 minutes into the video, and the average view duration was very low. So I don't think most people even got to the part where I tell them I have a new channel. So I think I need to retry that and do another video on my main channel that is a bit more tailored to that audience and that advertises the new channel more quickly. But I think I talked about, like, I was kind of building the machinery to build a course for Notion for like people who are creators and teams who want to use it to boost their productivity. So I've kind of started building a machinery for that. I'm building out a course area of my website on a staging version. And then for the template pages, they are now set up to collect email addresses. So I used to just like link out to the templates and just give them out and whatever, not know who was using them. For each one, I've now built a landing page where people can either just go straight to the template or they can get the template and also sign up for a Notion Tips email list. So I'm basically getting my stuff together with this new website.
That's fair.
And in addition to that, like I said, I launched my channel and I've got 4 videos on there now. So in terms of actual video output, I think October was one of our most productive months in a long time. It's just that not a lot of them are on the main channel. So it's interesting, like building a new project sort of like reignites that fire.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically my project check-in. Hey, I paid my first mortgage. So that's fun.
See, now the interesting part about your project check-in here is that I think it wraps very neatly into the main topic, because you're starting a new channel and you're going to be trying to get more followers again, more subscribers, and you've just bought a house, a symbol of financial success to many people. It's a tough thing for people in our generation to get a house. Both of these are things that you kind of want to do going forward, and you have to decide, when have you got enough? How many followers are you hoping to get on that new channel? And like, is the house going to be, are you good then, or do you want to keep building? Now, do you want to buy a mansion after the house? You've got to pick your own stopping points soon.
Yeah, I definitely want a mansion. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want a mansion.
Yeah, you shouldn't get a mansion because they're haunted every time.
So yeah, I have some thoughts on this whole enough question. So the channel is interesting. In building it, before I had launched, I had a model I was looking at, which I have now realized was a very bad model to be looking at. So my friend Sam runs a channel called Wendover Productions. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it. It's very big. It has at least 2.5 million subscribers. And he launched another channel a couple of years ago called Half as Interesting. And Half as Interesting, I believe, hit 100,000 subscribers before the first video even went up, because he advertised it on the main channel and it was like a mystery thing. So I was like, oh, well, I should try to do that. I should try to like get, a ton of subscribers over to this new channel before it even launches. And I kind of didn't do that. I think I just got a little bit too busy and, or maybe just too excited to make content for that new channel. But I realized that his model was not the one I should have been pursuing. In fact, it could have kind of prematurely killed this new channel. So Half as Interesting is like variety content optimized for viral views. It's like interesting, almost like interesting Wikipedia facts, like the secret protocol that happens when the Queen of England dies, or what's the longest drivable distance in the world without getting on a boat or a plane, like that kind of stuff. The average person would click on that out of curiosity. So perfectly fine to have a ton of subscribers waiting in the wings when you launch that. I have a general productivity channel, but my second channel is a super niche, like Notion tutorials channel. So it's like people who want tutorials on a specific piece of software. So if I had tried to push a bunch of subscribers to that channel before I launched it and they had no idea what kind of content there was going to be, a ton of them would have had no interest in it when I started launching it. And then they would be subscribed and YouTube would say, oh, your subscribers don't care about these videos. We're probably not going to show them to other people. So in regards to your original question, how many followers do I want on this channel? I don't care. Like, I literally don't care how many followers. What I want is as many followers as is needed to build up a sustainable side business with the the paid education stuff I'm going to do. Paid templates, paid courses. In regards to that, I saw one of the co-founders of Notion tweeted with one of those like open face emojis. Somebody made $300,000 selling Notion courses. So I don't really have a time frame for that, but that's sort of like, okay, I'm going to give myself a goal of hitting that.
Okay.
Like, can I make 300K selling my own product? And it's not even like, I don't need that money, but I would like to prove to myself that I could successfully sell my own product and build my own business and sales pipeline. Like I would like to prove to myself I can do that as an entrepreneur. Um, and if I'm successful in doing that, it would allow me to maintain my current level of income and maybe raise it up to a point where I could give you guys raises uh, without having to rely so much on frequent uploads to my main channel for sponsor money. That's kind of my overall goal. So in terms of like enough money wise, I feel I have enough now. I would like to be able to maintain that current level of income while being able to put more time into each video that I do for my main channel instead of having to put out like more videos to make more money.
Yeah, because the content treadmill never ends.
The content treadmill never ends. And I know like the way that I put effort into videos, and maybe I could be more strategic about it, but the way that I put effort into videos doesn't boost the views on an individual video enough that it would make me double what I make now. So it's not like I could just realistically cut my publishing schedule in half and expect to double my sponsor rate and get the same amount of money that way, which means I either have the choice of accepting lower income or finding another way to make income. And I choose option B. What is behind door number B? Number B. House-wise, this is an interesting thing. The house I bought is not necessarily in the location that I like would love to be in forever. So what I consider to be is a good investment because I'm no longer paying rent. I'm paying into equity. I'm going to learn a lot by owning a house. It's going to be cool, but I can already tell like I'll probably want to get something that I consider to be better at some point in the future, but I'm not in a rush. So I don't know. Like,
okay.
I guess this puts me squarely in the camp of
wanting
I'm
more.
not completely content with what I have now. So now is not enough. Which like in the context of the discussion that we're probably going to have, I mean, it makes me feel a little bit guilty. Shouldn't I have enough? But I don't know. How do you feel about your current situation and what is enough?
Well, I don't feel that my current situation is enough, but that's just because I kind of know what I think enough is, and honestly, I don't think that it's that crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Enough for me would just be like more financial safety for the people close to me, and obviously myself. Like I'm not gonna sacrifice all of my own income to the point that it doesn't end up helping in the end. But
right.
I want enough time to be somewhat more socially active in whatever community I end up a part of. Things like cool community gardens, little, local community involved change. I like being a part of things. And having an income to bills ratio that allows me to live happily beneath my means, merely as a way of knowing that I'm always getting a little safer rather than the other way around, because a lot of people get stuck in a paycheck to paycheck thing, which is you're living at your means or even under it. I just want to be able to live a little, over it. I want to live under my means so that it's safer every time. And then I want to have that free time more so than like a crazy ultra rich life or something. I want to have the free time to have like a garden and read and think a lot and take photos and go stand up paddleboarding and things like that. A slow, peaceful life, which doesn't require much other than the initial safety involved in allowing me to have that free time.
Yeah. If you were to own a place, then I think that would be even more attainable. And that's one thing I think about. Yeah, like if you were to eventually buy a house and then maybe even pay it off early. Like one thing I think about is like how much I'm considering financial upside versus everything else in decisions. So with my house, I ended up putting more than 20% down, but I have no intention of paying off the mortgage in an accelerated fashion. Like I'm going to pay off just whatever I need to pay out every month because I could take any excess and I could put it into the market and likely make more than I would save by paying it off early. But for somebody with your priorities, it might actually make more sense when you can to pay off a mortgage early, because then you would sooner own your house free and clear. And
Yeah.
maybe you would end up with a lower, balance in your investment accounts later on than you would have otherwise by like a small margin, but you would have that like security of knowing
Yeah.
like this is my
I very much
place.
value the emotional value higher than like, some small percentage of financial difference in the future.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the things that I dream of, the dream is that I have like a place that I live happily, and I live under my means in such a way that I can travel 2 or 3
Mhm.
times a year. I want to have a home base from which I can go stay somewhere for a handful of weeks as if I lived there, live an alternate version of my life. Like what would it be like if I lived in Kyoto? This is my Kyoto life. I'll live there for a month and come back to my home base. That's the dream, but it
Yeah.
involves living beneath my means in a comfortable, happy home somewhere that isn't too expensive. Then it's easier for me to obtain that. So it's
Mhm.
kind of just freedom and peace. So I would definitely be the kind of person who wants to pay off stuff like that soon. I also like snowball debt payment more than I like stacking for similar reasons.
Yep. There's
It's more
another place where
emotionally
we differ.
valuable to me,
Yeah.
and that makes me feel better, and if I feel better, I'm more motivated, and then I'm more likely to do things that would make me more money.
Mhm.
So
So
in the end, I think I would actually financially benefit from that.
for people who don't know those terms, can you quickly explain them?
Yeah, so they're alternate techniques for paying off all your debts. The snowball technique, I believe you pay off the one with the smallest balance first,
Mhm.
and then you take all of the money that you had to pay toward that balance. Let's say that was $100 a month bill. You pay off that whole thing. Then after that, you take that $100, you put that toward the second smallest thing. And then when you're done with that one, you take all of that pay together and so on and so on. And you keep increasing the amount you can pay monthly until eventually they're all gone. And the alternate stacking method, I believe, is to put them in the order of highest interest rate,
Mhm.
because this is mathematically slightly smarter and you will save the most money on interest that way.
And you will
But
pay it off fastest.
yeah, but what feels better to me is seeing something. Yeah, you'll pay off all of it fastest, but like
Yep.
it'll be longer before you get to the point that you've paid off one of them, probably.
Yeah, one of them. Yep. Most likely.
Now, I like the
Unless
emotional
it
burst.
aligns where your smallest interest rate, or sorry, your
Yeah,
highest interest rate is your
unless it just
smallest one.
happens to, but I think the general situation would be that trade-off. But
Yeah.
yeah, I like Snowball better because it would simplify my life to have to worry about one fewer bill, and I like the
Mhm.
simplicity. That would feel good. And then seeing that it was gone would motivate me, and I'd probably work
Yeah.
better as a result.
This week's episode of our show is brought to you by our friends over at Skillshare, which is an awesome learning library full of thousands of classes that can teach you practical skills that you can actually use to get your hands dirty in a ton of different topical areas, from video production and editing to digital animation and illustration to money management to productivity. Skillshare has a class for basically anything that you want to learn: art classes, music classes, all kinds of stuff. I've even got a couple of classes on Skillshare, one on building a productivity system, making all your productivity apps work together in harmony, and one on building strong habits. And I have a third class coming out in January 2021 that you're not going to want to miss if you are a creator. But speaking of creators, I always do a specific class recommendation when I do ads for Skillshare, and this month is no different. Today, I want to recommend a class called Video on a Budget: Prepare for Your Shoot Without Breaking the Bank, by one of my favorite YouTubers, Christopher Rhodes, who has a channel called YC Imaging. He is one of my favorite filmographers. He has a great channel all about his techniques that he uses to film music videos, which is something that I have an interest in. And if you want to learn how to up your video game without spending a bunch of money, and you want to learn specific skills that may not be like the skills you would always think of when you think of video skills, but are actually very, very useful, like location scouting, then Christopher's class is going to be an excellent resource for you. And one of the great things about Skillshare is that all their classes have an active learning component. Each class has a project, so there's something you can use to get your hands dirty and start using the skill you're learning right away. Another great thing about Skillshare is that it's a very affordable platform with their annual subscription costing less than $10 a month. But if you want to try it out before you even plunk any money down, they also have a free trial. If you're one of the first 1,000 people to go over to Skillshare.com/Inforium, you're going to get yourself a free trial where you can take as many classes as you want during that trial period. So if you want to get started learning new skills, if you want to take one of my classes, want to take Christopher's class, or want to take anything else on the platform, head on over to Skillshare.com/Inforium and be one of the first 1,000 people to sign up to get that free trial. Big thanks, as always, to Skillshare for sponsoring this episode and being a huge supporter of basically everything we do here, podcast, YouTube, all kinds of great stuff. Huge thanks to them for sponsoring this episode. And a big thanks goes out to our second sponsor this week, which is Hover. And Hover is, as you probably know if you've listened to my show before, the best place on the internet to get yourself a domain name. I think we actually talked about how many domain names we have in this episode. And I get all my domain names over at hover.com. I have thomas.lol. I've got thomas.ninja. I'm pretty sure I still have that one. And recently I just bought thomasfrank.blog. And one cool thing you can actually do on Hover is redirect domains to another domain that you own. So for instance, I've got thomasjfrank.com, I've got tomfrankly.com, I've got thomasfrank.me, I've got thomasfrank.blog. I've gotten a lot of different domains that represent my name or my personal brand, but they all are set up to redirect over to thomasjfrank.com. So I could say the one that's easy to spell sometimes, or if somebody just happens to type in the domain that is associated with my Twitter handle, which is Tom Frankly, it's going to get them all to the same place. And that is something that you want to think about when you're building your own personal brand. How can you make sure that people land at your sort of online home base, no matter where they come from, so they can see your portfolio, so they can figure out how to contact you, so you can build professional relationships, so you can get clients, so you can maybe impress employers, whatever it is you're trying to do. And of course, when you have an online home base, having your domain is the first step to doing that. Even if you're not ready to build a website for a portfolio or whatever, you do want to get your domain name so somebody else can't take it. I learned that the hard way by not being born early enough to get thomasfrank.com. But like I said, I've got all those other ones. And Hover is, again, the best place to get your domain because they have a ton of different extensions you could choose from, your .coms, your .me's, your .lols, and they have a very streamlined and friction-free checkout process. A lot of other registrars do a lot of like pop-ups and they try to sell you on extra products. With Hover, it is super easy, friction-free, super fast to get your domain. So if you want to get your domain, make sure you have it locked down for when you're ready to start building out your online web presence and save 10% off your first purchase. Go to hover.com/CIG. That is HOVER.com/CIG. And once again, thanks to Hover for sponsoring this episode and supporting our show. Now, I respect that. Anna is like that. My mom is like that. A lot of people are like that. They want to see more loans getting paid off sooner. And they're willing to pay a little bit extra and take a little bit longer to pay off their debt.
Well, I just think the total interest for the debts I have, like the difference isn't going to be significant enough for me to care over the course of like 30 years.
Yeah. So this is my like hard line piece of financial advice when it comes to snowball versus stack. If you have credit card debt that is accruing at like 22% interest, like pay that off. Well, first try to consolidate it and
that is a
refinance it to
point.
like a personal loan. But say you're like, I've got a $5,000 loan at 3% interest, but I've got $10,000 in 22% interest credit card debt. Like, you need to kill the credit card debt first.
Now that is a very, very good caveat. I don't have that kind of credit card debt, so all of my percentages are roughly between like 3, 6, 7. They're all like, it's not a significant difference.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if I had horrible ever mounting credit card debt, then certainly that would be the first one, followed by the snowball in my case.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely get that done first.
The way I did it, and people might know this, I'm like a advocate of the stack method. I care nothing for the emotional win of paying off a specific loan. I want to pay the least amount possible, so I will pay off the highest interest possible first. The way that I sort of dealt with this emotionally is I just created a spreadsheet that had all my loans, and then it it created a total debt number, and I put a graph in Google Sheets that would just show that line going down of my total debt over time. So every time I make a payment on one of those loans, the line itself would go down. And that was like enough motivation to see all of my debt going down over time.
That
But
could
that's not
definitely
enough for
work.
everyone.
Well, some people might look at a chart like that, realize how overwhelmingly long it is, and then just feel worse. And if you spiral into depression, you probably won't be that productive financially. So it could backfire.
Exactly. Yeah. If that's something that a lot of the number people like me don't quite understand. It's like the numbers do have an emotional effect that differs from person to person. And if numbers like debt or income or whatever it is are affecting your emotional state, they're probably affecting your ability to work productively, which probably affects your earning potential, not to mention your happiness.
And which is a really hard to measure effect.
Yeah. And like personally, if this mattered to me, I would rather be happily in debt for 30 years than miserably in debt for 15.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's basically how I feel. It's a pretty good sum up. Is like, even though it would be slightly smarter, except for the credit card situation you mentioned, in which case it would be very much smarter to get that one out of the way first.
Yeah, when the interest rate is high enough, like that should be your number one priority, because it can get so high that, like, number one, you're just throwing away money if you're not paying it down, and it can be so high that it just can stick around forever because it'll accumulate faster than you can pay it off. Like if you've got 25% interest or 22% interest on a $10,000 balance and you're paying the minimum $25 payment a month, like you will never pay that off. You're just gonna
that's the trick. Math is real fun, isn't it?
Math is fun. We're gonna do a credit card episode on my channel at some point.
That's probably a really good idea. Because also, if you have anything with like a variable interest, things that aren't obvious and predictable. All of my debt, is very reasonably low interest and, like fixed. Nothing crazy is going to happen.
Now, I have learned that
I think I'm horribly irresponsible.
I am okay with some debt. In fact, to me, I view debt as a tool when used responsibly, and when the debt does not create a difficult financial situation on a month-to-month payoff basis. Like if there is debt that I can pay off each month without like even thinking about it in terms of stress, and that offers me something, I'll often take it. So like the house I just bought, I only put 20% down because I wanted to avoid PMI and I wanted to get the lowest interest rate possible. And it wasn't, the interest rate didn't even hinge on it being 20% down. It hinged on it being under a specific price limit where like the federal government will back the loan. So I had to put a little more than 20% down to get it under that price limit, essentially. And that let me get a really good rate. And the only reason I like kind of went for it is I had not yet, and still have not yet, finished building a calculator to figure out if the PMI is worth paying or not. Because there is like a mathematical equation you can build to figure out, is PMI worth paying or not if you are taking money out of your investments to pay your down payment. And now there's more equations to do, because I just learned that Wealthfront will let you borrow money using your investment balances as collateral, which is really interesting because I had to take money out of my investments, and my investments were making, like, I think on average or over the lifetime, currently it was like 12% return in my Vanguard account. I had to take a bunch of money out of that to pay my down payment. I don't know, but it may have actually been smarter if I had been able to borrow against my investment balance at 2.5% to pay my down payment and then pay that off over time. There's math I got to do there. It's very interesting. But
it's at this point where I'm like, if this is too much math and I just want to be happy and the numbers can go away now.
See, I love the numbers
of math.
I love the numbers.
Not that I hate
getting
math,
into this
but I have
stuff.
a limit of stressful finance math.
Yeah. And I just love the stressful finance math. I love getting into it. But like the general point is, if I can keep my war chest and get something I need with really cheap debt, then I'll do it. And this is something that I think business owners think about more naturally than people who are salaried employees or who are making money hourly. Number one, as a business owner, like, I know there's all these threats, And I guess like if you've ever lost a job, you would understand this too. But from a business perspective, um, paying like $500,000 for a house is not as smart as letting the bank pay for 80% of that. Because if I fall on tough times and I have parted with $500,000, then the probability that I'm going to have to lay people off is much higher, or maybe even like my business goes under. But if the bank is taking care of that, then like the worst thing that can happen is, yeah, maybe they repossess my house, but I don't lose my business and my team doesn't go hungry.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah. You don't
that's
want to
how I
lose
think about
all
it.
of
Like,
your liquid ability to
yeah, I'm
do
paying
things.
more dollars in total because I'm taking on debt and there's interest. But what I'm doing is I am paying like the bank for the service of allowing me to keep my war chest and my optionality and my ability to take a punch if something goes wrong. And like if the cost of that service is not too high, I'll take it every time. But again, that's an emotional, it's like an emotional difference thing, because some people that would eat away at them all day long. And if that's the case, it's the wrong decision. Just like, and this is a spectrum thing, it's not even a binary thing. That's where I'm comfortable. Where I'm not comfortable is in making like high stakes trades. You know, there's people out there who are like totally comfortable like betting the farm on Apple or like an IPO or something like that. And like, okay, if you're going to do that, that's your level of risk tolerance. My level of risk tolerance is not there, but it is at a certain point where I'm okay with certain debt.
Yeah.
And I almost see it as a way of like hedging risk in certain ways. So it's the same reason I finance cars. Like a lot of people be like, oh, you can't afford that car. It's like, well, I could afford it, but I want this car, and I could either part with that amount of money. So my Stinger was, I think, 54,000. I could have parted with $54,000, which would have reduced my war chest. And also it would have been a lot of money out of investments that could have been making like 12% right now, average 7%. Or I can take on debt at 2.5%. Like
Yeah. And
I'm
at that
going to
point,
take the debt.
mathematically, it makes sense to
Mm-hmm.
take the debt.
Yep. Now I typically, you know, with the exception of the house, I'm not going to finance things that I can't afford. A house makes sense because you know you're buying an asset that is going to appreciate in value. What I will never do is finance a consumer purchase that will depreciate that I couldn't buy myself if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, it's interesting to like hear about like your emotional state in terms of like what would make you happy and your dream. I've been thinking about this, like what is a dream for me? And mine's quite different. And I think it's also quite vague compared to yours. I simply want a life where I have the freedom to pursue things that interest me, and I want to be perpetually interested and fired up about something that lets me build things and learn things. Like that is it seems very vague, but it adequately describes what has made me very happy over the course of my entire life.
So enough to you is just always having that.
Always having that. Yep. And you know, sometimes that may mean like I'm interested in something where that costs a lot of money, or I need to invest a lot of time. Like it's going to change, but that's just kind of who I am. And it was interesting. I was having a conversation with a couple of friends a couple of months ago, and at that time, I was feeling a bit burned out, a bit overwhelmed again. And this is like a recurring story over the last couple of years. And they asked me like, "What are your long-term goals? What do you see yourself doing in 5 years?" And I couldn't answer, which it felt so weird to me because I have my impossible list with all these goals on it. And I want to do all those things, but there wasn't a single one that was like sticking out as like, hey, I really want to do that right now. It was all things that I knew I had put on the list, but I wasn't feeling excited about any one of them. And I was feeling this stress because my thought process at the time were, well, I had this dream of becoming a YouTuber and I did that. And like it's stressing me out right now. So therefore, if I became like a musician, that would just stress me out. If I became this or that or whatever, that would just stress me out. And it's been interesting to see how my mindset has shifted as I've gotten interested in building out this course for Notion people, for building out my new personal website. It's another project, but because the interest is there and the passion is there, that idea that it's just going to be this like stressful burden in the future, it's not there. I just feel the excitement to build this new thing. So that tells me, oh, well, this is very different than what I was building in the past, but I'm still excited to do it. And I felt that same excitement for building my budget spreadsheet, or learning camera operating techniques, or like learning how to lay Ethernet cable in my house. Like when I get to learn and build things, I am satisfied and happy. And
So it
it
sounds
often
like
doesn't.
maybe you already basically have enough, other than the desire to remove constant video creation as something that you have to do, since
Yeah.
it would take the time away from all of those things that you're actively interested in.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's what it is. And maybe there's some combination of things I can do to keep the channel sustainable while allowing myself to do that. But yeah, I need the ability to learn and grow always. That's just who I am, and take the occasional vacation. But
Yeah, I mean
it's weird
that's
because like I know
convenient.
a lot of people be like, if I had like, just like a farmhouse in the country that I owned and I could just like have some chickens, like I'd have enough. And I'm like, I wouldn't. That might be cool for like a year, but then I would get something else in my head that I'd be interested in doing. So
Yeah, that's
I don't
fair.
know. It's like a weird combination of never enough, but I understand what the enough is. It's just like at a meta level or something.
I mean, that's
I
a
don't know.
more
Like,
sustainable not enough than if you were just like, I need to have a Scrooge McDuck mansion with a giant vat of gold coins that I can
I
swim
need the
in,
money
even if it's
pool.
very painful to do so.
Yeah, I've seen the Family Guy parody. That's what actually would happen.
Yeah.
You just fall and break
Yeah,
all
but
your
the
bones and win
desire to just
coins.
constantly be interested in stuff is a pretty reasonable enough to be chasing, because really at any given time, you might already have it. You just don't want to lose it.
Yes. So it's weird. Like in a way, I do have enough. It's just that like my enough requires constant progression.
Yeah. But it's not
And
like a weird extrinsic progression that it is outside of your interest. It's purely
yeah.
based on what you want.
Mm-hmm. But I don't have long-term future goals of like excess material wealth over what I have now. But at the same time, I'm not the kind of person who's like, I have enough now and will always have enough. Like what I have now is enough. Cause I know like I will probably pick up an interest in the future that will require, you know, buying something. So like when I was younger, I didn't really need a garage. And now I'm like, well, I kind of like riding my motorcycle, but I also have a car. So I kind of need a garage. And that's like
Yeah.
fine. So and I don't know. It's weird. And one thing that I try to keep in mind with this, because I realize like I'm a very excitable person, is it is my interest in acquiring new knowledge, more money, more things. Like, is it genuinely something that I am driven to do out of a desire that is meaningful to me? Or is it I'm like chasing what somebody else has out of like hidden jealousy? I recognize this in myself. I don't know if you feel the same thing, but because I'm so interested in so many things, I also follow a lot of people who are very good at those things. And as much as I try not to, I will like unconsciously compare myself to them and then feel like, oh, well, I need to work harder over here, or I need to do this to get that.
Yeah, I do that a lot.
And okay, so yeah, I'm not alone. I would imagine that if we both do it, then the audience probably a lot of them do it as well.
Well, I get the urges. I they last for like a day or two until I'm like, wait, I'm being randomly pulled in a random direction by somebody that does something cool right now.
Yeah.
Let me stop. Let me consider that first.
Yep. I'll have to tell myself like, well, that's what they do. And I don't just do that. I do other things too. So like it would be very unrealistic for me to think I could do the same thing while also juggling all these other things. Because naturally, the other things I'm juggling, they're not going to just be like little side projects. I'm going to feel that I need to be at the pinnacle with each one of them. And it's just very unrealistic. So
Yeah.
that's probably my biggest struggle with like the concept of having enough, is making sure that I'm not chasing things that are just there because I am looking at somebody else and comparing myself to them.
That's probably the biggest thing that I've been working on it a lot this year, because obviously we've had a lot of time to think,
Mhm.
insert thousandth comment anyone's made about the pandemic. But I've
Right.
spent a lot of time thinking, and like I've had to start trying to pinpoint which things I really do want to pursue more effortly and
Mhm.
which ones I would like to not push so much, because the enough for me involves that time to be slow, to go for a walk, to have a garden, to go spend time taking photos. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I like 92 things. And that means that
Mhm.
I have to accept that I can't keep them all firing on all cylinders at all time. I have to let things go somewhat. In order
Yeah.
to have enough time, I have to reduce what I consider to be enough skill sets. And that's been very difficult, because I just have to accept that there's a limit to what I can
Mhm.
maintain. Otherwise, I have to have no free time, and I will never have the time where I can go on walks and chill by the water and do all this calm stuff, because
Yeah.
I'm too busy juggling like 92 languages and pixel art and photography and all this other stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, one thing that I have to think about a lot is when I'm considering getting into something, what is it going to take away from my current life? And
Yeah.
like most often it's going to take away time, which is something that I want. Like I want the ability to just wake up some mornings and like, oh, I'm going to read a book. And like that's one thing that I kind of don't have right now. And I realize like
I haven't read like at all this year for the same reason.
I've read a bit this year, but the past month especially has been just a whirlwind of getting my new site built, my new channel launched, get videos out on both channels. And I realized like life is a ebbing and flowing cycle. And I'm just in a very particularly busy cycle right now. But I have to be careful not to say, okay, well, like this level of output is what has to be the norm always, because it is representative of the peak of a cycle, and there needs to be a corresponding valley at some point to allow for rest and recuperation. So that's something to keep in mind as well. How do I keep the time as well? When I get excited about something, it tends to be something that would afford me more money, more optionality in terms of opportunities. But additional free time is usually a pretty back burner consideration, even though like when I really think about it, it's probably the one that I would want the most.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
I'm
really
good
hard
at
to come to that conclusion, but then accept it like emotionally.
mhm.
You might logically say it, but you have to feel it and then do it.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess to put a little bow on this conversation, so we can get into some of them cult member questions, and then I can go get some writing done. Is when you're thinking about what enough means, think about what it means to you, and not necessarily just what it means to somebody else, because clearly, like our definitions of enough are very different.
They're very
They
personalized.
they're very personalized. Yours seems more concrete and and simple in terms of like you can picture what that
Well,
looks
I
like
want
in
to
your
be,
head.
Thanos when he's just sitting on like his farm. That's it. I just want to be like Thanos, happy Thanos.
You want
Dot
to sit on
gif.
your farm with the knowledge that you have just wiped out half of the universe?
Well, I might be able to snap away that knowledge in that particular situation, so I could just so that'd be cool. But yeah, just something chill like that.
I've seen some things that I don't want to remember, and now I don't have to with this forgetting ray.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but like, yeah, it's like simple for you. You know, you want to be able to travel, have free time, do slow activities, things like that. For me, it's more fuzzy, but like philosophically, the idea is quite simple. Just have the freedom to keep building and learning things, not get
Yeah.
stuck in the same rut forever.
And
You
I
know?
may, in fact, have a more philosophically fuzzy one after I hit that first goal. I may after that be like, cool, I've enjoyed these peaceful things for a while. It's time to do something different. I just don't know that yet because I haven't hit it. The only kind of enough measurements that I would be really, really suspicious of if I were anyone would be any enough measurements that come with a number if that number is not meeting your basic safety and whatever needs.
Like,
a lot of
I
ones
just
that
need
come
$1 million.
Yeah, like, I just need $1 million. Past a certain point, money numbers become, you should really question whether that's a real thing or whether you want like 3 cars or a giant house or 18 million YouTube subscribers. A lot of the stuff that comes with numbers is being clearly driven extrinsically because the intrinsic joy of doing something isn't that affected by how many times you've done it thus far.
Yeah.
So it's
the
I
number
would be
is
suspicious of number-based enough goals.
Yeah. I used to have more number-based goals than I do now. Now, like, I have a few of my impossible lists that are just fun to track. Like, it's fun to see. I've got like hit 5 million subscribers on there, but I don't really care when I hit it. I
You're
literally
not
have it
devoting your
there
life
just
to
because
it right now.
No, I would literally have it there because I would be interested to see how long it took between like 1 million, 2 million, 5 million. Like, it's just interesting to see those dates.
And that's
but
interesting.
I don't care about like, and I've learned, and I think the biggest one was hitting 1 million subscribers. I hit it. I took a picture of my screen, posted it on Instagram. I was like, "Woo, I got it!" And then, 5 minutes later, I'm like, "Oh, well, that dopamine rush is gone." And now the next milestone, I guess, is 10 million because of the way that human brains perceive number increases. We don't perceive them linearly. We perceive them logarithmically or exponentially or something like that. Like, like 1 lion is half as threatening as 2 lions, but like 67 lions and 66 lions, like the same thing,
Yeah,
right?
that's
so maybe it's based on survival mechanism. Like, you get 67 lions coming towards you. That's 66, 67. It's fine. It's the same thing. You're gonna die either way.
I guess a really relatable numerical one, maybe that would be an example of what to watch out for, would be like the kind of person who says, "I want to read 100 books this year, then I'll be happy." But now maybe reading 100 books could make you happy, but it won't be the fact that you've read 100. It would be, do you enjoy reading when you're in the middle of reading the book more so than do you enjoy that your Goodreads shows that you have read this many? Like, which a lot of the numbers can make you not enjoy the moment.
That's been sort of my position on Goodreads forever. Like, Goodreads should not be considered to be your trophy case.
Yeah, I removed my to be read list a long time ago because it was stressing me out.
Yeah. I used to do that. Oh, I'm going to read 30 books this year. And then I just be in the middle of reading when like, am I behind on my progress? Am I going to hit 30? I'm like not enjoying the book. Or I would be incentivized to gloss over something that I could probably read again or mull over, or think about deeply because, I need to read 1 chapter a day.
Yeah. Or skip out on a really big book. Because why would you read the Da Vinci biography? That's worth like 6 books worth of reading.
Yep.
You should just read 6 smaller ones. Like, it's fine to maybe reading 100 books, you will be happy, but probably only if you enjoyed reading each of those 100 books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think like the goal there is just read.
Yeah. Read like more. Just be careful about attaching numbers unless they're kind of loose directional numbers rather than you think they'll actually make a difference.
It could be worth using a number to get yourself in the habit of reading. Like, read 20 pages a day or half an hour a day or something like that, just to get yourself in the habit of doing it. But I think once you're in the habit, those numbers are sort of meaningless at that point. It's one of those like, what got you here will not get you there things. Like you take the training wheels off the bike eventually. Nobody in the Tour de France got the training wheels on the bike. Though that would be very funny if like
they should allow
the top
someone
cyclist in the
wheels.
world is just on one of those tiny child bikes with training wheels and the tassels, still going down the mountains of France at like 70 miles an hour, but just on that. Oh, hey there. So apologies in advance, but as of this part in the recording, Martin's microphone decided to, for some reason, disconnect because computers are unreliable, of course. So we're switching over to his camera audio, which isn't quite as good, but is still quite listenable. I would watch that.
Yeah. Sounds horribly dangerous, though.
Can we have a pro cycling circuit where like it's pro cyclists, but they have to ride children's bikes?
I
with
think
tassels and streamers.
they've got to find a way to like balance that better so that they're less likely to just flip over because of the tiny bikes.
They just need to get good.
I mean,
That's it.
probably.
Just get good. I forgot to, or I don't want to forget to say this. So when talking about like the number thing, I had a number at one point in my life that I kind of no longer believe in, but I want to comment on it for a little bit. So when I was 23, I set this goal of hitting, I think it was $900,000 in 2013 or 2014 dollars.
Was it like inflation. One of those kind of fire kind of things?
Yeah. So yeah, I think it was 2014. I wanted to save up $900,000 basically to do the whole Mr. Money Mustache thing, which is like save up enough money where you can do the 4% rule. And the 4% rule is if we assume the stock market makes 7% on average, and then we'd be really conservative and say, okay, maybe 5%, then you could take 4% of your investment portfolio every year and still it would last forever. So like if I saved up $900,000, I think 4% of that is $36,000 a year. And if I took out $36,000 a year, but it was making at least 5%, then it would last forever at that amount of money, or maybe even grow slightly. A lot of the people in like the FIRE community, the financial independence, retire early people, they live by this whole goal of like get enough money saved up that I can do the 4% rule and retire early. There's a great YouTube video, which we can possibly link to in the show notes, where a guy is basically like debunking it. But I think 2020 has shown how the 4% rule can really fall apart. If the market stays good forever, then it's fine. But when we look at the market and we say, oh, it makes 7% on average, that is a long-term view on average. And your money would make 7% if you just kept it there and never touched it. But if you're taking 4%, and so let's say you're taking 4% every year, but you're withdrawing it monthly, so it's your income. Well, then if the stock market has a huge crash like it did in March of this year, you're not taking out 4%. If you're making a withdrawal at that point, you're eating into so much more in terms of gains. So if you're going to live on the 4% rule, if the stock market has a huge crash, you had better be able to take out, let's just say your portfolio loses 50% of its value overnight and you need to take money out the next day for your living expenses. You better be able to take half of that and live off that. Otherwise, you're taking out a ton more, and it might, eventually run out. So the whole idea of living off the 4% rule and retiring early and just being able to live off that forever, it may be flawed. So maybe we got to say it's that's a 2% rule or something like that. But that is an example of a number that I used to be looking at, I'm going to hit this much money in my investment accounts and then I can just retire early and do whatever I want. Number one, I think that is quite naive. It's no coincidence that the FIRE movement got so popular in the 2010s, because for basically all the 2010s, the stock market was just a rocket ship. And I mean, still, it's made an improbable and inexplainable recovery this year. But this year, we finally did see that huge crash due to the COVID pandemic. So that's something to keep in mind if you're trying to do the whole FIRE thing. But in general, aiming yourself at a big number is not necessarily going to make you happy. Anywho, is there anything else you wanted to say on this, or shall we get into cult member questions?
No, I think that's enough.
All righty. Okay, so cult member questions. Number one, if you had to be employed by somebody else, what company would you work for?
This is a good way of seeing what could also be enough.
Did you think about this? I'm just reading this for the first time and I'm like, oh man.
I didn't actually prepare an answer. I would probably want to work. I don't know if I could get hired for this, but I would want to do photography professionally. If I could do that, I'd want to be hired by somebody like Tofugu or Duolingo or some language related, probably.
This is a good question. There's there's companies I like, but I can't think of many. Is it a cop out answer to say standard? Because like I kind of
It's like a little bit.
I own part of
It's a little bit of
standard.
one, because that's not a significant life change. If I suddenly am a
That's
full-time
true.
photographer or I'm working with a language company, that's way different than what I'm doing now.
That's true. That is way different. I mean, I have something that I'm doing right now that I'm very interested in, but it's like it's building my own thing. I just can't think of one. I can't think of a company where I'd be like, oh, it'd be cool to go work for them. So I guess I have to rephrase the question as, oh, you have to go work for somebody else.
Yeah, you have switch careers, pivot. What are you doing?
Well, I kind of addressed this in my recent video, the one called How to Figure Out What to Do with Your Life, where I kind of said like the company you work for or the specific job role doesn't matter that much. What matters is the qualities of the work that you get to have, which include things like, are you building or maintaining things? Do you have creative autonomy, or do you have a lot of direction? Some people want the direction. Some people want to just be like loosed on the world to do, whatever. Do you get credit for your work, or are you kind of behind the scenes? And how does it affect your work-life balance? So, obviously, like I have a big interest in Notion. So it would seem obvious that I would answer Notion, but I'm pretty sure they only accept people who will come work in San Francisco at the office. And like I would not be willing to move there. So that kind of like writes them out. I think I would need to work, number one, for a small company where I could be part of a small focused team and feel like my role was substantial in the building of that company. And something where I could learn and build something new. And I literally don't know. I think I would let opportunities come my way and jump at one that was exciting. But there's nothing right now where I'm like, oh, it would be that company right there. I'm not sure. Though, if people want a sort of more satisfying answer, what would be interesting to do as a small gig, like a temporary one, my friend Steve Cam, who runs Nerd Fitness, when he was younger, worked on a company that puts on floating music festivals. So they're like music festivals on cruise ships. That's cool. I think it would be really interesting to be part of that for a little while. Like just get the experience of working with bands, dealing with logistics. Like it sounds interesting to me.
All right, so that's an interesting answer.
That's my answer for now. But yeah, it's not like, oh, I'd go work for Tesla. Like, no, I don't think I would. Tesla's cool. I wouldn't want to work for them. I got all kinds of companies that I admire, but I don't think I'd want to work for them.
Yeah.
I just love doing my own thing, building my own stuff. And yeah, I guess like the realist answer is, if I, for some reason, couldn't do my company anymore, I would find something to do at Standard. And I kind of know what I would do at Standard because I'm a process optimization guy. So I would do that. All right. Second question. What podcasts have you been listening to? And you chose to put this question here, which makes me think that you have been listening to a podcast. But as far as I'm aware, you don't typically listen to podcasts.
I've been catching up on some old Anthropocene Reviewed episodes.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty much
Remind me again of what that show is.
It's where John Green basically reviews a couple things from the human era of Earth and then rates them on a scale from
it's like
1 to 5 or something to that extent.
So one like episode, cinema. Okay.
He was reviewing like Canada geese, and I don't remember if it was the same one, but he reviewed Kentucky bluegrass, like the grass in lawns, and Diet Dr. Pepper, just all sorts of. But they're really, the way he reviews them, it feels so deep to be learning so much about how important maybe Diet Dr. Pepper is to humanity.
It sounds a little bit like 99% Invisible.
I don't know what that is because it's too invisible for me.
99% Invisible is a show about kind of the same thing where they just do a detailed sort of journalistic cover on things you would never consider. Like how in New York City, there's these tunnels underneath the city that were used for like herding cows. So it was like,
I thought you said hurting with a T.
Not like, hurting. Well, probably eventually hurting them.
The cow pain tunnel.
The cow tunnel of pain. No, it's like herding, and they crisscross the city, and a lot of times they're been boarded up, but some of them are accessible via subway tunnels and things like that. It's a very interesting podcast. I have not been listening to that one. The one I've been listening to very consistently is called Business Wars. It's a really well produced show on the Wondery Network, and it'll just be like a whole series of episodes telling the story of like two big businesses that are kind of competing. So I listened to a whole series on like Dunkin' Donuts versus Starbucks. There was one on Nintendo versus Sony. There's one on like Snapchat versus Facebook. And then sometimes they'll do more broad categories. So the series I'm listening to right now is like dating app wars. It's not any two specific dating apps because the scene has sort of changed over time. There's so many players, but it's just very interesting to learn the history behind all this.
It's a very Tom answer. So I'm glad that we're both on brand as a general rule.
And yeah, I haven't been listening to anything else. So part of the reason is Listen Money Matters and Money Lab are on, they've been on a very long hiatus. And I don't know if they're coming back. I religiously listen to every Money Lab episode, at least the ones that are Andrew and Matt, but they haven't podcasted in a while. So just been Business Wars. And then every single night I listen to a book called Ghost in the Wires when I go to sleep. I just pick a random chapter. I've listened to the book so many times, so I just pick a random chapter. At least, this has been the last like 6 months. I will kind of like sift between probably 5 or 6 books that I'll come back to. So these are Ghost in the Wires, The Martian. What are the other ones? There's one called Black Edge. There's one called American Kingpin. I think it's actually those 4. There may be one of that I can't think of, but yeah, those 4, I've listened to them all probably a dozen times over, and I'll just pick a random chapter from one of them and fall asleep to it.
Honestly, that sounds like a really good use of audiobook to me.
Yeah.
The perfect situation where it doesn't matter if I missed a few words.
Doesn't matter at all. Yep. And I don't listen to new books that way. I used to when I was younger.
I to do it that way.
Yeah, I would try to like listen to part of Harry Potter while falling asleep or something, and it just like it kind of works, but the problem is there's no option in the Audible app to say set the sleep timer to turn off right when I stop paying attention. It's like you have to choose a number of minutes, and I don't know how long it takes me to fall asleep. I could make it 15 minutes, but then it might end before I fall asleep, and I'm like, "Aw," and then I'll choose like an hour, and it'll get just way ahead of where I stop paying attention. So
yeah, I can't do it for that situation.
Yeah, I just got to do books that I've listened to a million times. So yeah, that's our answers to those questions, I suppose. So I think that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Inforium. The next time you listen to this podcast, I think we're still going to be recording from here, but I believe I will be moved into my new place.
Nice.
At least with my personal belongings. I'm doing like a double
Fancy
move.
Times are coming.
Fancy times are coming. Stressful times are coming. That's just how it be.
Yeah, they were the fanciest of times. They were the most stressful of times.
As always, thank you so much for hanging out with us, listening to this podcast. If you enjoy it, there is a rating and review system over on Apple Podcasts. So if you're one of the people who listens to that or listen to the show on Apple Podcasts and you haven't done that yet, you can support this show by giving us a rating and review or just by sharing it with anybody who hasn't listened to it yet, maybe a friend. Send them your favorite episode. I just remembered that the camera that's filming me is this one, so I should probably look at this one instead of this one. I keep looking at the webcam. And beyond that, I mentioned my new channel. So if you want to check that out, it's got all sorts of Notion tutorials. And there's a really big one recently that I put out on how to build a task manager from scratch in Notion. So if you want to learn how my entire Ultimate Tasks template works from scratch, that is going to be for you. The whole thing is over at thomasjfrank.com/explains, or you can grab my templates at thomasjfrank.com/notion. I think that's about it for calls to action and such. I guess if you haven't subscribed, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, I think is still a thing. Google Music is done because YouTube Music is a thing now, but I'm pretty sure Google Podcasts is still a thing like that. Yes. So all those things, and this stuff. Otherwise, go over to theinforium.com and you'll find all the ways in which to subscribe. And you'll also find the show notes for this episode. And the URL is going to be what? theinforium.com/7?
Yeah.
Right?
That should be it.
All right. So that's going to be it. Thanks as always, again, for hanging out with us. And we will see you in the next episode. Thank you.